discuss how oppressive and dehumanizing racism is to communities of color. We identify racism as a systematic, institutionalized, and intentional way to ensure that communities of color do not receive justice, have equality, and freedom or liberation. Racism is what killed 7-year-old Aiyana Jones, who was shot and killed by a Detroit police officer. Racism is what killed Rekia Boyd, Chantel Davis, Mike Brown, Oscar Grant, Trayvon Martin, and many more. Racist police killings are nothing new to people of African descent. Historically, police have brutalized and terrorized our community. Therefore, your job has gone terribly wrong when those you were supposed to serve and protect fear for their life in your presence. Furthermore, it gets worse. The United States does not keep track of how many people its police killed. In response to police violence and the dead value we see of black life, emerged the Black Lives Matter movement. A movement started by 3 black women after the murder of Trayvon Martin, designed to remind people of the current war on black America. It is a call ensuring all black lives matter. It is a call to action demanding more than police accountability. It is a resistance movement that fights back against any form of anti-blackness. As a part of the war on black America, we have a school-to-prison pipeline, which targets youth of color and introduces them into the criminal justice system. The racist school-to-prison pipeline shows us that black and brown youth are being seen as problems, well before being seen as human beings. It is scary to know the same officers oppressing our communities could be the same officers in our schools targeting youth of color and sending them down the path of the school-to-prison pipeline. Racism is that in Wake County, African Americans make up 25% of the population, but receive 62% of suspensions. In addition to that, in North Carolina, black students are 4.2 times more likely to be disciplined harsher than their white counterparts for the same infraction. We must dismantle the pipeline and demand education, not incarceration. Demand solutions, not suspensions. Demand counselors, not cops. Demand an end to the racist policies that target students of color. And demand access to a fair and equal education, because education is a human right. Today, as we resist the new Jim Crow, the age of mass incarceration, we must always look at history, the racist history of America and other countries whose people are seeking liberation. From the enslavement of millions of Africans, exploitation of indigenous people, Jim Crow laws, and the war on drugs, we must not forget the violence against our people. Remembering the oppressive apartheid government in South Africa and how the people resisted and organized. Also remembering international solidarity and how the people of Palestine have always supported the Black Liberation Movement and Nelson Mandela and the anti-apartheid South Africa movement, and those movements returned that support. That's why it's essential African Americans stand with Palestine, while our history and current struggles today are corresponding in so many ways. Today we see the state of Israel reinforcing these inhumane acts of segregation and genocide on the people of Palestine by denying them basic human rights, restricting them from going down certain roads, not giving them access to certain buildings, starving the occupied West Bank with poverty and lack of resources, the Israeli government openly showing its dislike for the people of Palestine by saying they are not humans. That is a prime example of why black people should stand with Palestine, because we too know how that feels. The United States funds billions of dollars to the Israeli occupation. In addition to that, Obama gave $1.9 billion to welcome the new racist government. We must hold the United States accountable and ensure that our tax dollars are not being used to fund the occupation that kills thousands of Palestinians. The IDF constantly beats and terrorizes the people of Palestine, similar to how the police do people of color in America. In fact, the NYPD does training with the IDF. I recently read an article that FIFA visited Israel and Palestine to discuss the upcoming matches for the Palestinian national soccer team. They came to the conclusion that the players living in the occupied West Bank will be able to travel to the international game. They would depart from the only airport Palestinians had access to. However, the day when the team was supposed to leave, Israel forces did not allow them to board the plane, while the day before Netanyahu agreed to let the team leave. These are the atrocities that the people face. But as allies, we always have forms of resistance to aid the struggle against the occupation, such as BDS, boycott, divest, sanction. Boycotts exclude Israel from academic and cultural events and calls on consumers to refrain from buying Israel-made products or those made by companies that support the Israel government in various ways. Divestment calls for a withdrawal from all stocks and funds from corporations that violate international law in Palestine, and sanctions will come in form of no military or economic assistance and no diplomatic relation. The boycott strategy is going strong, and there is some movement in terms of divestment. Until we build a powerful movement, the sanctions component will be unrealized. During the first uprising, protesters received support from Palestinians on how to deal with tear gas. Organizations such as the Dream Defenders took a delegation to visit occupied Palestine. That is an act of solidarity and what we must do to overcome oppression in our community. We must stop the genocide from Ferguson to Palestine to Baltimore and all over the world. Apartheid was wrong in South Africa and is wrong in Palestine. In the words of the great Nelson Mandela, we know too well that our freedom is incomplete without the freedom of Palestine. African Americans and Palestinians both want self-determination, want the right to own our own land, own our own stores. We want to be free, and we will be free by any means necessary.